In a land without time, in a place without name, there stands an ancient castle. It rises beyond memory, older than your thoughts, older than your name, older than even the first time you knew fear. This is not a dream, and yet it lives in the same place as dreams, the place behind the eyes, behind the breath, behind the world. You stand before the great doors, heavy, iron-banded, weather-worn and waiting. You place your hand on the wood. It feels familiar, like something inside you remembers this place. You push, and the door opens. You step through into the quiet, into the warmth, into yourself. There is a great hall ahead, stone walls, flickering torches, and far at the end, a great fireplace, glowing like the heartbeat of the psyche. You move closer, and as you do, you see it. The chessboard, carved into the very stone of the floor, black and white, light and shadow, the pattern of opposites, the pattern of the self. You step to the board and take your place, and now you begin to feel it. What am I stepping into that I have stepped away from? What part of me has waited for this moment? As Jung said, the self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness. The fire flickers. The board waits. The game is about to begin. A pawn slides forward, small, straight, controlled. The ego makes its move. Cautious, deliberate, always afraid to lose. The ego believes it is the game, that it is the king, the center, the master of strategy. But it is not. The ego is the center of consciousness, the I that thinks, chooses, remembers. It emerged early in life to organize experience and to create continuity. The ego is the subject of all personal acts of consciousness. It forms the centre of the field of consciousness. Jung. And to survive in this world, to be accepted, to be safe, to be approved of, the ego developed a mask, the persona, a face for society, a performance, a role. Jung explains, the persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society, a kind of mask designed to conceal the true nature of the individual. The persona is what the ego constructed and shows the world. It is what gets praise. It is what avoids rejection. Good child, high achiever, quiet one, strong one, funny one, helpful one, the one who doesn't need anything. These are adaptations for survival, directed by the ego at the centre of consciousness. We had to make these adaptations. The ego directed them. But with each adaptation, something else was hidden. Not the self, for the self is whole and cannot be lost. But awareness to it, and along with traits, emotions, truths and instincts that have been pushed into the shadow. Disappeared from view, but still a part of us. And now the shadow makes its move. A dark night steps forward, not in anger, but in return. Ask, what part of me was I taught to disown that was placed in my shadow? And what truth still lives in my shadow? Emotions, traits, true parts of who you innately are. The game deepens, and you begin to feel it. You are not just the player. You are the board. You are not just the ego. You are the whole. Jung said, the ego is a derived phenomenon. It owes its existence to the self, but thinks it is the self. The ego defends, and the self reveals. The ego defends, desperate now. It surveys the board, scanning for threats, calculating, protecting, strategizing, because the ego believes that this is war, that this part from the shadow is an invader that must be repelled. Defend, delay, divert, deny, with perfectionism, people-pleasing, control, withdrawing, numbing, shame, guilt, doubt, overthinking, and symptoms. These are its weapons, its shields and stratagems. But the self does not fight. The self reveals. A queen glides forward, radiant, whole. Ask yourself, what is the cost of continuing to pretend? What part of me has worked so hard to be accepted, liked, approved of, beyond reproach, criticism, or judgment? And what would it say if I no longer had to try? The experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego. Carl Jung. The defences now tremble because something older than fear is rising. The shadow begins to return to the light. The board is quieter. The masks lie scattered. The ego slows. Now the self calls home the shadow, calls it back. Pieces once exiled return. Pieces forgotten to the ego. Pieces that threatened the ego's perception of what was safe. Anger, power, need, vulnerability, chaos, desire, creativity, even joy. Everything we once were and were made to forget. Each one blocked, each one defended against. Ask, what in me was punished, judged, reprimanded? Not because it was bad, but because it was true, and that this truth did not accord with the tastes or beliefs of those around me. What gift have I buried beneath the shame that was given to me by others and adopted by the ego to protect me from myself? Ask and allow the answers to present in your awareness as a deep knowing. These parts, disowned, forgotten, placed into the shadow by the beliefs of others, seen as too much for them, for the society, for the group. These are not our beliefs, these are theirs. Jung said, the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, and that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Now, the self includes, the self welcomes, and the board begins to shift. No longer obviously black and white, just whole. The ego calculates. It plays its final defense. Another counter-move. Another perfectionist tactic. Another doubting thought. Another distracting sensation. Another mask. But the self sees through it and waits, because it knows that this is not the end, this is the beginning. Each pawn taken is a false trait surrendered. The need to be perfect, the need to be strong, the need to be invisible, the need to never need. Now, the ego sees, finally, it was never the king. It was the servant, the protector, the strategist. And the self was always the one it protected. The self is the goal of life, the totality of the individual. Carl Jung. The self embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the whole man. Now, the final pieces move. Checkmate. But no one loses, because the ego does not die. It returns to its rightful place, and the divided self is no longer so. The black and white squares are no longer opposed. The shadow and the light no longer at war. The attacker and the defender have become one. This battlefield has become a mandala. You are not fragmented. You are whole. You remember now, you were never here to win. You were here to return. Ask, what would it feel like to stop having to defend, to strive, to play, perform, to compete, to achieve, and instead start living? What would my decisions look like if they came from wholeness, not defense and fear? You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. And now anchor this moment of realization. Touch your thumb to your third finger. Softly, gently, firmly. This is your anchor, your access point. Each time you return here, you return to the self. You return to calm, to clarity. You return to truth. You are back now. The game is complete and the self remains. And so do you. Keep using this understanding, this touch in your hand, to remind yourself of this reality, this newfound understanding. That the game is over, and that the time for the ego to keep defending is done. And that, with confidence and willingness, we can commit to a new game. A game of authenticity, wholeness, progression, not one of defense. One that allows all the pieces on the board to be allowed to be there, to be included, and to be integrated into the whole game of who we now are.